depending upon what time they did it.
Yeah.
Right, it was 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, nobody would have heard anything.
Maybe he had a load of pumpkins he had to deliver.
Oh, you should put the tractor away yet? That's still there.
I think we're gonna be live here, so.
Oh, we're live?
Yeah,
I
probably.
I hope we're live.
Uh-oh.
Good to see you, Otto. That's enough.
You want Otto to go sit there?
What?
Is Otto running the Bible study?
He might.
How about you? You know a lot.
No.
Claudia?
That's what I'm here to learn a lot.
You're live.
He knows that. He's alive.
No, they just took the trailer. They don't want the food.
Good.
So then if they can do the vegetable.
They must
You're,
be pretty strong to pet.
you're on.
Oh, okay, we're live, that's, okay. Not a problem. Not a problem. Let's see, Genesis. Throw a couple of things over here for the next service. Okay. So we are live. You gotta put up with me. Oh, did everybody get a chance to grab something to eat? There's some great looking muffins there today, and a little bit of Kringle left. I will, as good as the muffins look, I'm going to pass on it only because we'll have muffin crumbs flying out of my mouth as I'm talking. That would look kind of ugly, so we won't do that. Genesis chapter 24. We just got through the birth of Esau and Jacob, or we are getting through it. Where did anybody remember what verse we finished on? Ish. 27. Okay. Oh yeah, we did talk about that, didn't we? About the fact that when they grew up, Esau and Jacob, what their characteristics were. And then what did we see? We see that mom and dad both picked favorites. You know? I don't know. Pam, do you pick favorites in your house? Is there one? Do you like one better than another?
No, sir,
Okay. Good. That is good. But here, I mean, now isn't this interesting? And you're going to see this over the course of the next chapter and a half. This is the family of whom God is going to build many nations from. First with Abraham, right? And then, of course, as it passes down through his son, as he passes it down through his son Isaac, and then through. This is who the church is going to be built upon in the Old Testament church before Christ, of course. And what we look at is these people aren't the most upstanding of citizens, or at least they are. They can be a bit deceiving, and maybe not as holy as we would think that they are. And this is the first place this is one of those places we see it, where they begin to pick sides as to which child they like best. I remember when as I was growing up, in fact, my sister would say this to this day, you were the favorite. They would say to me, she'd say, I was the favorite. And I would beg to differ with her and say, no, she was, you know. But then you negotiate a little bit, and you'd find out that she would think that mom thought I was the favorite. Well, I know that I know my sister was my dad's favorite. I know that. You could tell. And you don't intentionally do that, but, you know, those kind of things do happen, and we see that here in this place. That Isaac loves Esau, Rebekah loves Jacob, and we are going to see it play itself out in a more difficult way as we move forward. So, why doesn't somebody read from verse 29 to the end of the chapter?
Once when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stew, for I'm exhausted." Therefore his name was called Edom. Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright now." Esau said, "I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Swear to me now." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright.
Okay. Other than the apple in the Garden, I know it wasn't an apple, but other than the apple in the garden, a piece of fruit in the Garden of Eden, this was probably the most expensive meal that's ever been served. This reminds me of a time when I was in middle school. And Daniel Webster Middle School. And I don't remember what grade, 7th, 8th, 9th, somewhere in there. And I used to have lunch money every day because they had hot lunch programs there. So you take your lunch money, you go to you get your hot lunch. At the grade school, you had to buy tickets ahead of time. So then you'd have to take your ticket out for your meal. But once you got to the middle school and then the high school, you actually just paid like a cafeteria account. So I had my money there, and I had a couple of dollars, I guess, 2 or 3, whatever the number was back in the early 70s. And I recall that the meal was awful, or was going to be awful. I don't remember which one it was, but it would have been one of their more awful ones. So I wouldn't have wanted to eat it. So I remember one of the guys I would sit with, there was one guy, his name was Arthur Witt, and I can still remember, I can hear his voice to this day. And Arthur Witt always brought his own lunch. He never. And in his lunch container, he had a package of those Hostess Ding Dongs, right? And so I didn't want that meal. So I'm going to see if I can purchase those Ding Dongs from Arthur Witt. Well, he was way smarter than I was, because those Ding Dongs costed me that entire lunch. That was the most expensive pair of Ding Dongs I've ever eaten.
Were they good?
I don't think they were $3 good when you could buy them for a quarter. You know, again, remember at that time you buy a package of 2 for a quarter. So yeah, they weren't that. They were at the time they probably were, but no, they were not that good. This is kind of what I think about when I read this story here. Jacob's cooking stew. He's cooking and interesting, he's cooking the kind of stew that he knows Esau's going to like. And so, it is possible that Esau and Jacob were, that they've talked about the birthright thing over time. And my guess is that wouldn't be an unusual thing between brothers in those Israelite families, because the oldest brother is the one that received the birthright, and what the birthright got you is double what everybody else got. So, if your family was worth $100,000, you got half of that firstborn, and you became the patriarch of the family. So it's both of those things. And then the next quarter of it would go to the other brothers, and then the other quarter of it went to the church, right? So now if you had 8 brothers, they had to split that other quarter, while the firstborn would get it all. Well, in the case of this, there were only 2 brothers, so one would get 50%, one would get 25%. So my guess is there would be conversations that would go on about that. I certainly would think that there would be. And it would not, based off of Esau's statement, I'm about to die, what use is the birthright to me? Did Esau really, and Esau also had heard from his father beforehand that the birthright was going to be going to the younger, because that's what God said. So, did Esau really think very highly of his birthright? You know, it's possible that it was easy for Jacob to negotiate it away because Esau didn't see much value in it. That's possible. That he's willing to sell it for a soup and a soft drink. You know what I mean? So now, interesting, as we take a look at this, the Lord tells Isaac that the younger will lead the older. So the Lord has already said that that the younger would carry the birthright, that the younger was going to carry the nations. And yet we see here, because Isaac loved Esau, did Isaac really believe it, or was Isaac not going to do it? And did Isaac certainly believe that the Lord was going to make many nations through him? Is it possible Isaac just figured he's going to do it a different way? Because he certainly wouldn't do it this way.
He wasn't waiting to watch what God would do.
He took it into his own hands. Absolutely. That's probably what would be the case. So, all of those things together, now Jacob knows that he's supposed to have that birthright, because he's probably heard that. If not through dad, he's heard it through mom. Because mom's, he's mom's favorite. So, he's going to now take it into his hands. Okay? So, what we see here is we see him doing it in this way. Now, interesting, Luther will argue that there is nothing wrong with Jacob doing what he has to do to get his birthright. But still there is something a bit underhanded in what has happened here. And the underhanded part of it is that they didn't trust God. They were, as Emily said, they're going to take it into their own hands. And so Jacob says, "Sell me your birthright now, and I'll give you something to eat." And Esau says, "I'm about to die." That's an interesting statement. Well, remember, Esau was a hunter. And the role, that vocation of hunter was considered a very dangerous, they weren't out hunting bunny rabbits, They were hunting, bigger animals, probably bear and other types of large animals. And so the role of hunter was being considered a dangerous role. And so Esau says he doesn't think he's going to live long. And so now we would look at that and say, well, that's maybe not that's kind of a difficult way to look at life. But you know, there's a lot of people that look, especially young men, that will look at life that way, that don't see life past 25 or 30, especially in our city today. There's many young men who believe that they aren't going to live past the age of 30. I remember for probably all of my 20s, or at least half my 20s until I got married, I believed the same thing. I believed I was going to die by the age of 30 to 35, somewhere in there. And a lot of that, though, was because like I said, I wanted to race. I wanted to drive race cars. And at that time, it was not unusual for, men to succumb to injuries driving race cars in their young age. And so I really believed that was probably that could be a fate, and I was somewhat open about it, And obviously that changed as I found out how slow I was as a racer, and I only got to kill myself going that slow. So, and then I obviously I got married, and all those things changed. But in our city today, we see a lot of men that have no hope. So here we see, I'm about to die. What use is my birthright to me? You hear young men today as they say, I'm not going to live very long. What importance is it of me to spend time in church or get married or have a job, or you see what I mean? It's really easy when that is what you believe your outcome is going to be, of how it changes your thought process. So Esau says, I'm about to die, so what use is my birthright? Yeah, I'll sell it for a bowl of soup. Well, Jacob then doesn't completely trust that it's going to work. What if Esau comes back and says, what, are you kidding me? Yeah, I told you I was going to give you my birthright, but it was just a bowl of soup, So Jacob goes one step further, and Jacob says, swear to me now. And so now he puts it before God and says, swear. So we see Esau swear to him, and in that act, he has sold his birthright. And so Jacob gives Esau the bread and the stew, and he eats and he drinks, and he goes away. And then it says, thus Esau despised his birthright. What does the New International Version say? How does it end the chapter?
Despised his birthright.
What?
Despised his birthright.
They said the same thing, despised his birthright. And so that sale of that birthright has now created a tension between Esau and Jacob. If there wasn't one before, it is now certain. So, all right. Let us now go to chapter 26. Somebody want to read the first 5 verses of 26?
Now there was a famine in the land beside the earlier famine of Abraham's time. And Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, in Gerar. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land where I tell you to live. Stay in this land for a while, and I will be with you and will bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands, and will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and will give them all these lands. And through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed, because Abraham obeyed me and kept my requirements, my commands, my decrees, and my laws. So Isaac stayed in Gerar.
Okay. So now we see there's another one of these famines that are going through the land, and we've seen this on. We'll see this at other times, and so Isaac goes to the king of the Philistines, and he's going to. with the thought of taking all of his family and everything, and he's going to move to the Egypt area. And the Lord comes to him and says, no. He says, stay here and I will take care of you. And then, of course, what does he do? He gives him, he shares with him almost word for word the same blessing that he shared with Abraham, with his father. And so this is something that we see, and Isaac obeys God, and he remains in that land. That's really what this section is. As the key to this section is to see that the Lord says to Isaac the same blessing that he gives to Abraham. And yet, very interesting, he gives him this blessing, he gives him this reassurance, and Isaac is still going to sin against God after it. He's going to attempt to sin against God when he was going to try to give his birthright to Esau later on. And so while he trusts God here, he doesn't really trust him all the way. So we'll see that. Okay. So now we come to verse 6. Somebody want to read verse 6 through verse 11?
So Isaac stayed in Gerar. When the men of that place asked him about his wife, he said, "She is my sister," because he was afraid to say, "She is my wife." He thought, "The men of this place might kill me on account of Rebekah, because she is beautiful." When Isaac had been there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked down from the window and saw Isaac caressing his wife Rebekah. So Abimelech summoned Isaac and said, "She is really your wife. Why did you say she is my sister?" Isaac answered him, "Because I thought I might lose my life on account of her." Then Abimelech said, "What is this you have done to us? One of the men might well have slept with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." So Abimelech gave orders to all the people, "Anyone who molests this man or his wife shall surely be put to death."
Okay. All right. This is a rerun.
Vaguely familiar.
Yeah, here's a rerun. So we see, of course, Isaac, like father, like son. We see Abraham did the same thing. Now, Abraham could kind of argue, well, Sarah was his sister, right? He kind of was playing a tightrope game there. Isaac can't make that. Isaac can't make that same statement. So here we see that we have the exact same story. We again see this lack of faith with God's chosen, patriarchs and God. Just like we did with Abraham, we see it here again with Isaac, and there's a few differences. Now, here's an interesting thing, though, is there's three of these stories throughout Scripture, and there are some Bible scholars that would say, well, these are just three of the same story, that they're just recorded in three different places and with different characters, but it's one story, and that it didn't happen each one of these times. But there's nothing in Scripture that can endorse that. There's nothing that would follow that interpretation. What follows the interpretation is Isaac didn't trust in God in the same way that Abraham didn't trust in him. And he used the same tactic that Abraham did. Couple of differences in this one versus the one with Abraham is, note that the king the king does not bring Rebekah into his harem. So, the king recognizes she's his wife through some other way. Now, what was that? Is it something that he knew already? Was it something that somebody else told him? We don't know the answer to that. But what we do know is that as he's going to approach Isaac, and as he approaches Isaac, he tells Isaac, well, you're telling me she's your sister, but she's not, she's your wife. See, there was no doubt in his mind, and so he said, why did you lie to me? And Isaac said, because I thought that I was going to die, that, I was afraid for my life. So
So that
Abimelech,
must have been a really common practice in that time
to take wives.
to take wives.
Probably. Well, and again, as a king, you could do what you want,
That's true.
right? I mean, if I'm the king of Berea land, okay, that means all of Berea land is mine. And when I say all of it, it doesn't just mean, you're eating my muffins and, you're sitting at my tables. It also means all the people of Berea land would be mine. So why can't I do whatever I want with whatever is mine? Again, remember God's words in the parable, the king's words. Are you going to not let me do with mine, what I want with what is mine? It's that type of thing. That is part of the benefit of being king. And so, my guess is it probably happened frequently. So, but here, I think we see with Abimelech that Abimelech, whether he was a believer in the God of Israel, the one true God, or not, he certainly believed in the power of Israel's God. And so he says that, look what you have done to us. If one of my people would have, laid with your wife, you would have brought guilt upon the whole of us. And so we see, of course, at least a recognition that Abimelech feared the God of Isaac. Whether he was a believer in him or not, he feared him. So we see the same thing. He warned everybody, leave Rebekah alone no matter how good looking she is. Okay? So now we come to verse 12 through 16. Somebody want to read through that?
Had done in the days of Abraham his father. And Abimelech said to Isaac, go away from us, for you are much mightier than we.
Okay. So Isaac is now going to stay there, and as the Lord commanded him. And look what happens. His crops are abundant. And he becomes very wealthy. And so now he grows not just huge crops, but he gathers large flocks and herds. And so he becomes one of, if not the wealthiest person in the region. And the Philistines are angered. They're envied by this. And so then there's this section, verse 15, that said, so what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to slow down this growth. And they're going to do it by filling in all the wells. They're going to do it by trying to get rid of his water. Now that's very interesting because in this region here, water is difficult to find. And so, but it seems that with Isaac, whenever he dug a well, plenty of water. And so what do we see here? We see that Isaac, this is not just by Isaac's, wise farming, that he's got the Lord, the Lord is on his side. But they're trying to stop up all of his water supplies. It's funny, Robin and I, we're Hallmark people. We like the Hallmark television programs. Well, there's a show on Hallmark right now. It's been out for a few seasons called When Calls the Heart. Anybody ever hear of When Calls the Heart? Right now, the storyline in When Calls the Heart is you've got some people that are trying to dry up the wells in this town and actually trying to redirect the water to another town. And so it's really interesting. It's the exact same thing that we see going on right here now. Except this really happened. That's just,
Hallmark.
yeah, made for TV. So, what? What?
Wouldn't Isaac have been a relatively wealthy man to begin with? Because Abraham was pretty wealthy.
He would have come as a wealthy man. So I
He's
think
just got
that's
wealthy.
the great point that's here is it shows how wealthy he has become, because he would have started out wealthy and prominent, and so now it's just,
Yeah, he's probably wealthier than the king.
it is literally exploded. Yes. And so Abimelech, you're right, go away from us, you are mightier than we. And so the king is even speaking about, it's quite possible Isaac had more money than all of the village to get combined. Yeah, very possible. So, somebody want to read from 17 to 22.
So Isaac moved away from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar and settled there. Isaac reopened the wells that had been dug in the time of his father Abraham, which the Philistines had stopped up after Abraham died, and he gave them the same names his father had given them. Isaac's servants dug in the valley and discovered a well of fresh water there, but the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen and said, "The water is ours." So he named the well Esek, because they disputed with him. Then they dug another well, but they quarreled over that one also. So he named it Sitnah. He moved on from there and dug another well, and no one quarreled over it. He named it Rehoboth, saying, "Now the Lord has given us room, and we will flourish in the land."
Okay. So, interesting, again, as we take a look at Isaac is going now, he's going to reopen the wells that had been sealed up when Abraham died. So the Philistines, they're known for closing up these wells. Every time Isaac would open one, it was a success. It was a good well. It was a successful well. And so the first one there is named Esek, which means contention, because they were in contention with him. And then the next well, they get over it, is he names it Sitnah, and Sitnah, he names that one, that means enmity, that a division in between you and me. That type, because they were divided over this. And then he finally moves from there and he digs another well, and look at this, he has another, in a land that has trouble securing water, Isaac never has problem with it, because the Lord is with him the whole time. And now this well means broad places or room, because no one's arguing with this one. And so this is the well that the well that he was going to then care for his flocks and his family. So somebody want to read 23 through 25?
From there he went up to Beersheba. That night the Lord appeared to him and said, "I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you and will increase the number of your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham." Isaac built an altar there and called it on the name of the Lord. There he pitched his tent, and there his servants dug a well.
Okay. So here we see the Lord speaking to him. The first thing that he does is he worships. he builds a worship center. We would call it a church, but it's a worship center. So he builds an altar there for them to worship around, and then he has his servants there, and they dig another well, and it's another successful well in Beersheba. Okay. So, next section, does somebody want to read from there, from 26 to 33?
When Abimelech went to him from Gerar with Ahuzah his advisor and Phicol the commander of his army, Isaac said to them, "Why have you come to me, seeing that you hate me and have sent me away from you?" They said, "We see plainly that the Lord has been with you." So he said, "Let there be a sworn pact between us, between you and us, and let us make a covenant with you, that you will do us no harm, just as we have not touched you and have done to you nothing but good, and have sent you away in peace. You are now the blessed of the Lord." How far am I going?
All the way to 33.
Okay. So he made them a feast, and they ate and drank. In the morning they rose early and exchanged oaths. And Isaac sent them on their way, and they departed from him in peace. That same day Isaac's servants came and told him about the well that they had dug, and said to him, "We have found water." He called it Sheba. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba to this day.
Okay. So now Abimelech is going to come. He's going to bring his army and his advice, all his key people with him, and he sees that he says, we see that the Lord is with you. How is it that he sees that the Lord is with him?
He finds water.
Because he finds water everywhere he goes, in a place that's hard to find water. And so, yeah, that's exactly it. And so we plainly see that the Lord is with you. Interesting. Notice he doesn't say that he sees that he is a man of God or that God is with him. He sees the Lord is with him. That is the Hebrew word for the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for Yahweh. So when you see the word Lord in the Old Testament, you can replace that with the word I am, with Yahweh or I am, or something along those lines. And so Abimelech recognizes him as the true, he at least, if he recognizes or at least calls him by the name of the true God. And so he does that there. And then he says that that Isaac is blessed of the true God. So there, what does Isaac do? Isaac makes them feast, and they he answers Abimelech's request that they become, if not partners, at least that they are civil with each other. That Abimelech does not have to fear Isaac. Even though Isaac has become so big, Isaac in this here, Isaac has made a promise that he will not, that Abimelech and people of that area do not have to be afraid of him. Okay?
All these oaths that they're taking, are they all that with the vine business?
Yeah, those oaths, that would be that oath would be like a contractual promise. Yeah, that would be you can look at it that way. That doesn't necessarily mean that they swears upon God. An oath could be an oath between him and, it would be like I'm going to purchase a home. And I'm going to sit down with the bank, and we go through the financing, and we fill out all those papers, sign all those papers. What are all those papers? That's an oath.
Right.
That's a I mean, that's a binding legal promise that the bank is going to give me what I need and that I'm going to return what the bank requires.
So how did they seal the deal in those days?
There would have probably been, in this case, he sealed it with a meal.
A meal?
Yeah, we had that meal, they had the meal together, and that was the exchange of the oath. It might have been a handshake. There were times when they would do oaths, or where they would wrap a cord around both hands as they shook hands. So there were various ways of making the oath, depending on what the oath was for.
Well, like for the birthright, said he swore to him that he would have.
Yeah, now that swearing, that was making a promise to God. So that was different than an oath.
And this,
That was something that was made. That was a promise made to God.
and they did that, but God didn't approve of that, but they still did it.
Well, I mean, the Jacob's birthright was going to be Jacob's birthright anyway. So, that swearing to God was we would look at that more along the lines of an eighth commandment, a false witness. Okay, a false swear, because God had already said what was going to happen. So what they were doing was they had ignored God's words, and they were going to do it their way. It's blasphemous, is what it is. So, 34 to the end of the chapter.
When Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and also Basemath, daughter of Elon the Hittite. They were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. He married 2 women?
He married 2 women, yeah. Yeah, double trouble. Yeah. Yeah, and not just 2 women.
Two non-Jewish.
Two Gentiles, 2 Hittite. You talk about, again, Esau not respecting the birthright period. You know, this is like a big slap in the face.
And wow, he didn't die.
And he didn't die.
I mean, you know, he said he was on his deathbed.
Right, but he did. But look at what happened. When he married those 2 Hittite women, they made life bitter for Isaac. They were, they were like monster-in-laws kind of thing, you know. This was very difficult for Rebekah. Now, Rebekah's going to use that later on, and really she's going to kind of play on Isaac's feelings by using this, they're being mean to me kind of thing, when that's not really what her purpose is going to be. So we'll come across that really soon here. So let's begin chapter 27. We'll get through what we can. We got to get through a few verses anyways. Somebody want to read 1 through 4?
When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." "Here I am," he answered. Isaac said, "I am now an old man, and don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your weapons, your quiver and bow, and go out in the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die."
Okay. So, we are going to be looking at a bunch of characters here in this family, and we're going to see problems with all of them. So, first problem is with Isaac. What is the problem here with Isaac? What is the...
Well, he's going to give the birthright to
Yeah.
Esau.
Yeah, the birthright that God had already said was for the younger, Isaac wants to give it to the older. So we're going to see that here. That's going to be, there's challenge number one. Now, challenge number two would be in Esau. What would be the challenge with Esau here?
Here we promised it.
Esau had already given it away. He didn't say, well, the birthright is already been given, or God has already said that the birthright was going to go through. Esau was like, okay, and he's going to go off, and he's going to do what, he's what is really against God's will here too. Okay, so somebody want to read 5 through 13. This is going to be as far as we're going to be able to get today.
Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food, that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 young goats, so that I may prepare from them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies. But Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, Behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I'm a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him, and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing. His mother said to him, Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice, and go, bring them to me.
Okay. Here's the other 2 characters. Problem with Rebekah. What's the problem with Rebekah?
She favors one son over the other.
Yeah, well, she's favoring the one over the other, just like Isaac did with Esau. What else? She's attempting to deceive her husband. Okay, and as she's going to lie to and deceive her husband. What's the problem with Jacob?
He's going along with it.
He's going along. Yeah, Jacob doesn't say, Ma, this isn't right. And nowhere in here does Jacob say what we're doing is wrong.
He's lamenting that he's not hairy.
Oh yeah, he laments about the fact that what if I get caught? Okay? And Rebekah says, don't worry, if you get caught, I'll take the hit. Okay? So, right now we are 13 verses into this chapter, and there isn't a good character in the bunch. And this is the crowd by whom God is going to make the nations great. See, this is really significant for us. This reminds us, of who we are, and that is as sinful. We can stand here all day long and say, we, Berea Lutheran Church, we, the Lutheran Church of Missouri Synod, we have the purest of all doctrine. We follow God's word. We confess His name purely. We administer the sacraments. We do all these things. It's really easy for us to pat ourselves on the back. And yet we see how often we recognize that we have failed, and so we confess. And it's the same way here. We see that with the patriarchs. These folks weren't angels. These folks were sinners, just like us. And so when they get haughty, God knocks them down. When we get haughty, God knocks us down. And so we are to come to Him. The difference is we don't see them coming to God with a repentant heart. We don't see them saying,